Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from ECON 1610, Principle of Macroeconomics, Group 5. We'll be presenting on the topic of analysis of inflation and cost of living.
Is Aini Izzati binti Ahmad Zairi with metric number 2015230. I will start off my presentation with a short introduction to inflation. Basically, inflation means a general increase in price level which can cause decline in purchasing power. In an easier term, inflation means the same amount of money but has decreased in value. And the main tools in measuring inflation is called Consumer Price Index or CPI. Moving on to the examples of CPI computation from OIC countries. I've chosen 3 countries to be discussed in our presentation, which are Malaysia, Indonesia, and Turkey. First, we will look on how Malaysia compute their CPI. Basically, Malaysia used 2010 as their base year to measure the percentage change in the cost of purchasing a constant basket of goods and services. This basket represents the average pattern of purchases made by a particular population group in a specified period of time. However, we need to note that the changes in the cost of item in the basket are therefore due to only poor price movement and not associated with the changes of quality or quantity of consumer goods and services in the basket. The prices of 460 items are categorized under 12 major groups are included in the computation of CPI, and this information are obtained from about 24,600 retail outlets in Malaysia, including Sabah and Sarawak. The price used in the calculation of CPI are retail price and they are collected each month during a fixed period of time. Firstly, we can see that the price are collected on a monthly basis for all items except for perishable food item where the collection is done on a weekly basis. The selection of outlet in which price are to be collected is purposive with the sample designed to cover outlet with high sale turnover. Lastly, we can see that rent at value is an exception where the price are collected once in a quarter. Next, we will look on how Indonesia compute their CPI. So starting January 2020, the measurement of inflation in Indonesia will use 2018 as their base year. The changes in the base year from 2012 to 2018 is due to the changes in public consumption pattern, and these changes are based on the cost of living survey conducted by Badan Pusat Statistik or BPS during the year of 2018. There are 835 commodities which are categorized under 11 groups and 43 subgroups. The 2018 survey was implemented in 90 cities and they saw the highest number of commodities located in Jakarta, which is the main capital of Indonesia. The frequency of collecting price data varies from one commodity to another depending on the characteristic of the commodity. We can see here that the price of food, clothing and gasoline items are collected on each Tuesday, while other items are collected on a monthly basis, which is also on Tuesday, closest to the 15th of each month. Lastly, we will look on how Turkey compute their CPI. So basically, Turkey used 2003 as their base year. So items, basket and the weight are updated at the end of every year and chained with the last period's formulation. So basically, every year in December, new goods and services are added in the basket, while the goods and services which has loose importance will be taken out. Similarly, the weight will be renewed in the calculation of index. The price of goods and services included in the index are retail prices, including taxes but excluding any deposit and installment. There are 447 commodities used in the compilation of index, which is categorized under 12 major groups and 44 subgroups. So the price for food such as fruits and vegetables, also petroleum products, are collected once a week. Other prices are collected twice a month, while rent is collected once a month in the compilation of Consumer Price Index in Turkey. That's all for my part on CPI computation in OIC countries. I will pass this presentation to the next person.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Aina Umairah binti Halid with metric number 2017128. I would like to explain the trend of inflation between Malaysia, Thailand and Singapore. Overall, it can be seen that the inflation rate between these 3 countries showed an erratic trend throughout the 20-year period. Firstly, the inflation rate for Malaysia rocketed to 5.44% from 2000 until 2008. However, it plummeted to 0.58% in 2009 before it increased dramatically at 3.17% in 2011. 6 years later, there was a gradual increase in the inflation rate of Malaysia, whereby it stood at 3.87%. Then it dropped significantly to 0.66% as it reached 2019. Next, the inflation rate for Thailand stood at 1.59% in 2000. It soared to 5.47% in 2008, then it dived to negative 0.85% in 2009. After that, it recorded a significant rise to 3.81% before it reported a steep fall and bottomed out at negative 0.90% in 2015. This was the lowest inflation rate between the three countries. And then from 2015 to 2019, the inflation rate went up steadily to 0.71%. For Singapore, looking at the details, the inflation rate for this country started at 1.36% in 2000 and then surged to reach the highest point of 6.63% in 2008. In 2009, the figure plunged to 0.60% before it grew steeply to 5.25% in 2011. After that, it decreased rapidly and hit a dip of negative 0.53% in 2016. In the last 4 years, it ascended gradually at 0.57%.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Ajana Balkismiti Zakarani. My metric number 2019768. So now I will explain to you about hyperinflation. What is hyperinflation? Hyperinflation is an excessive or extreme inflation where price increases are rapid and out of control. During hyperinflation, a country experiences an inflation rate of 50% or more per month. Hyperinflation occurs during war. Second, when central bank printing an excessive amount of money. Third, when economic turmoil is in the underlying production economy. Hyperinflation can also surge the price of basic goods like food, fuel, while they become scarce. Hyperinflation are typically rare, but once they begin, they can spiral out of control. So next, we will proceed to the two countries that experience hyperinflation. The first country is Hungary. Hungary was among the most stable currency in the world. Its currency called Pango, which was previously pegged to the gold standard. Unfortunately, in 10 July 1946, Hungary suffers the world's worst hyperinflation, which is the highest level of inflation ever recorded. This happens during the World War II, when Hungary borrowed a ton of debt from Soviet in order to help Germany fight in the war. After the war ended, the Germany did not repay the debt, and Hungary was forced to pay the borrowed money. Resulted from that, Soviets took over their country and controlled all their budgets and took all their revenue obtained from the country in order to repay the debt, which then led to hyperinflation. Unfortunately, when the war ended and Pango did not recover, it forced its government to print more money and flood the country with banknotes to hedge the Pango from falling further. Hope its people have enough money in their hand. However, it only pushed the Hungary economy to the brink. Worst scenario, its price hikes to doubling every 15 hours. Depicted from the picture, money has been valued where tons of money has been used to buy a chicken. There are three causes of hyperinflation in Hungary. The first one is World War II. The second one is lack of reserve. The third one is when the government prints a lot of money. The second country is Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is the second highest incidence of hyperinflation in the history. The country's inflation rate of November 2008 was a staggering 79,600,000,000,000%, essentially a daily inflation rate of 98%. Based on the graph, we can see that from 1980 to 2000, the graph shows inflation rate is fluctuated, but then increased slightly until 2003 and depleted in 2004, but then increased slightly until 2006, and it rose rapidly until it reached at its peak in 2008 November. Thus, this shows that hyperinflation occurred in November 2008. Due to RAM hyperinflation, Zimbabwe dollar is no longer actively used as it was officially suspended by the government. They have moved to foreign currency like US dollar to be used as their medium currency. Furthermore, with the unemployment rate exceeding 70%, the economic activity in Zimbabwe has virtually shut down and turned the domestic economy into a barter economy. So we can see that many people in that country has lost job. So now we will proceed to the three causes of hyperinflation in Zimbabwe. The first one is the government increased the money supply in response to rising national debt. The second one is the political corrupt was coupled with a fundamentally weak economy. Last but not least, there was a significant decline in economic output and export.
Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Noor Amni Atira and I'm going to present on the causes of inflation in three countries which are Malaysia, Indonesia and Singapore. Let's begin with the causes of inflation in Malaysia. First, there is increase in money supply. When this happens, there will be increase in demand for goods and services. This is a situation when more money are chasing few goods. This will make consumer bid up the prices and therefore the general price will increase. Inflation will happen. Next is the implementation of Goods and Services Tax, which is GST. Malaysia is highly dependable on domestic consumption. When government impose this GST, the producer will most likely to increase the cost of production. The cost per unit of goods will increase and consumer will have to buy at higher prices. This will cause inflation. Number 3 is weaker exchange rate. When Malaysia ringgit depreciate, there will be increase in the cost of importing foreigner goods. Therefore, prices of goods will increase and inflation will occur. Next is the cost push factors. When there is expected increase in global crude oil, the prices of fuel to drive economic activity will increase. When fuel increases in most of production, there will be a high cost of production. This will result in higher prices of product. This will cause inflation. Finally is the supply shock. This happened due to the natural disaster, supply chain disruption, or geopolitical conflicts. This will affect the supply for food and energy commodity markets. Hence, the prices of goods will tend to increase. This is where inflation will occur. Next, we will see the causes of inflation in Indonesia. First, it is caused by food price inflation. When credit extension to the agricultural sector is reduced, the small farmers could not enhance their productivity in yielding for their crop. Hence, they will need more money in yielding for the crop. This will cause higher food price and therefore inflation will occur. Next is climate change that occur. Indonesia is highly dependable on the rice fields for their staple food. Hence, when climate change happens, it affects the rainfall that has a great influence on the production of food crops. This will cause the shortage in the supply of the staple food. This will increase the staple food price. Hence, inflation will occur. Next is the adjustment of oil prices. When there is expected increase in the global crude oil, The price of fuel to drive economic activities will increase, hence the cost of production will increase, and this will cause inflation to occur because prices of goods increase. Last but not least is the seasonal factor in Indonesia. During the Eid celebration, the demand for product and food increase. This will cause an increase in general price level of the products. Hence, inflation will occur. Now let's move on to the causes of inflation in Singapore. First is the open door immigration in Singapore. This will cause increase in the population of Singaporeans. Firms can produce more as the labor force increase. This will cause rise in wages and salaries. Hence, the firm need to incur more costs of giving wages to their workers. This will cause a high price of goods. Hence, inflation will occur. Secondly is the prosperity of Singapore's trading partner. When there is a rise or increase in trading partners' income, there will be high demand for export. The general price level domestically will increase. This will cause inflation to occur. Thirdly is the increase in foreign direct investment or FDI. A high expected return of investing in Singapore will cause many investors to invest in Singapore. However, in Singapore, the multinational corporation is export-oriented. Hence, when there are too many demand for MNC exported product, this will cause domestic product to also increase. This will cause inflation. Finally, when there is global rise in demand for raw materials, there will be increase in unit cost of production. In Singapore, the cost of aggregate supply will increase. This will cause the general price level to increase. Hence, inflation will occur.
Assalamualaikum everyone, my name is Nur Izzati Zainal and I will be presenting about the impacts of inflation to the people. So first and foremost, inflation will affect the purchasing power. So previously from the beginning of the presentation, we already know that inflation is a sustained increase in the general price level of goods and services over a period of time. So when inflation rise, the purchasing power of money is reduced as consumers need to fork out more money to buy their products. I give you an example. Look at the man over there. Yeah, that handsome man. Before this, he already bought 3 power bank for in a total cost of 30 ringgit, and now he want to buy a new one, but the price will no longer the same due to the inflation. He can only get 1 power bank for 30 ringgit. In other words, inflation will decrease the purchasing power of currency caused by an increase in prices throughout the economy. Secondly, inflation can affect the unemployment. So how inflation and unemployment works related. So according to Phillips, he observed that years with low unemployment had high inflation, but years with high unemployment had low inflation. You can refer to the Phillips curve over there. So it shows the inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment. However, this assumption only works for a short run. In the long run, their relationship will depend on natural rate of unemployment, the aggregate supply in the economy, and whether the economy has adjusted to reach natural state of unemployment. Thirdly, real cost of borrowing is reduced. Since inflation reduced the value of currency over time, cash now is more valuable than cash in the future. In other words, inflation allows debtors to repay lenders with money that is less valuable than it was when they borrowed. For example, let's say you borrow 100 ringgit from the bank at 0% interest, for example. So which must be paid back in full at the end of the year. So in 1 year, you should owe 100 ringgit to the bank. However, if say inflation is at 5%, then at the end of the year, your 100 ringgit is worth only 95 ringgit in real value because the prices are 5% higher. So you borrowed 100 ringgit, but by the end of the year, you owe 95 ringgit in real terms. So the real cost of borrowing is reduced. Next, let's see the impacts of inflation to the different groups of society. So the first one is producing classes. So who are part of this class? It is the one called producers and traders. the prices of goods rise at a far greater rate than the cost of production, whereas the wages, the interest rates, and the insurance premium are all more or less fixed. So what happened to them? So in this group, they will gain huge profit, higher profit during an inflationary period. But in another case, like farmers, may gain only if their output is increases or maintained. So the next groups, which is fixed income groups. This group involve who are living on past savings, fixed rent, pensions, or other fixed income groups called as the middle classes. So those persons who are working in government or private sector find that their money incomes are more or less fixed, while the prices of the goods and services keep increasing very rapidly. So those with absolutely fixed incomes derived from interest rate and known as the renter class, they realize that their money income is absolutely worthless and their past savings have insignificant value in front of high prices. In fact, fixed income groups are the most affected by the inflation. Lastly, our working class. During inflation, the working class also suffer. Firstly, because wages do not rise as much as the price of those commodities and services which the workers buy. Secondly, there is a time lag between the rise in the price levels and also the wages. The organized workers may not suffer much during inflation, but there are many group of workers which are not organized. There is no organization. For example, the agricultural laborers who find no way of pushing their wages during the inflation. In other words, in the working class, both parties are organized and unorganized are suffering, but those not in organizations more affected during this situation due to the wages issue.
My name is Nur Atira binti Abu Talib, and today I will present about inflation versus growth in income. As inflation rises, it is common for those who have well-paying jobs or whose income is above inflation rate to earn more, while the lower-paid group can only see a reduction in their purchasing power. Wages also will lag behind inflation. Okay, so how does inflation affect the growth in income? Okay, firstly, inflation will impact on income. There are three situations. Firstly, if someone's income rises faster than inflation rate, they will experience growth in income. Secondly, when someone's income rises similarly with inflation rate, they will experience no growth in their income. Okay, thirdly, if someone's income lags behind the inflation, they will experience loss in their income. In addition, based on household expenditure survey, it is stated that lower income group, they will spend more, which is exceed their income, and it will lead them to be disabled household because they have less amount of money left for them to save and use for future or for emergency compared to the higher income group. And goods and services will appear to become more expensive for them. Inflation also impacts income distribution. Moreover, inflation is claimed to increase income inequality. This is because inflation hurt the poor relatively more than the rich. Okay, firstly, higher income group. Obviously, higher income group, they will receive more during inflation. Meanwhile, the middle income group will only keep pace with the inflation. Lastly, the lower income group, they will be affected the most during inflation, and they will see a reduction in their standard of living. Okay, what is cost of living? It is cost of food, housing, transportation, education, healthcare, taxes, and financial obligation that incur by the household in order to cover their cost of living and maintain their standard of living. Okay, let's see a further example in order to understand how does inflation impact on growth in income. Okay, Ali lives in Kuala Lumpur and his wages is RM5,000 per month and his calculated cost of living is 4,000 per month. But when inflation happens, his cost of living will affected, which is it will increase. Then he will probably need to spend more than 4,000 monthly. As a result, the inflation has reduced the value of his monthly wages. Example 2, it shows how inflation affects the purchasing power of someone. Okay, assume with RM200, we can buy a full of trolley filled with grocery goods that have different type of commodities needed by a family. But when inflation happens, the same grocery goods may cost as much as RM300. Therefore, if the family didn't receive an increase in their income, they will unable to cover the rise of their cost of living. Consequently, their standard of living also will drop. Example 3, it shows the impact of inflation on real income of workers. Okay, let's say Ali's wages increase from RM5,000 to RM5,500 ringgit per month. And the increase of his income is because of the inflation. Therefore, his cost of living also has increased by 500. And what happened to his living standard? His living standard maintained the same. Why? Because the increase of 500 of his wages, he needs to cover his cost of living that also increased by 500. Why? That is why his living standard stay unchanged. It means that with the increase of 500 of his income, so it is clearly described that inflation has worsened the income distribution. It also has negatively impacted the income of the poor and increase even more the income of the rich. As a result, when inflation rises, the higher income group, they will experience growth in their income, while the lower income group, they will experience slower or no growth in their income.
In conclusion, we can see that inflation impacts the multiple sectors of the economy. It impacts on the distribution of wealth and income, impacts on government, in production, political environment, business sector, and many more, and also affect the different classes of the society, the debtors, the sellers, the buyers, the agriculturists, the businessmen, the investors. Inflation is very common problem, but at the same time affected many people. So a reasonable rate of inflation around 3 to 6%, often viewed to have a positive effects on the national economy, as it encourages the investment, also the production, and allows growth in wages. But when inflation crosses reasonable limits, over limits, it has a negative effects. It reduces the value of the money. It might give gains or losses to the borrowers and lenders. It will discourage saving and investment as well, and many more. So high inflation not only reduces the benefits of wealth, but it also makes the poor people getting poorer and widens the gap between the rich and the poor. If food increases for a large portion of during inflation, the poor are harmed even more, since over half of family budget of the low income groups earners use their money for food. So it will give harm to these vulnerable people. My last word is inflation is everywhere in the economy. The rate is high in developed countries, but the rate is low in poor developed countries. In order to control the inflation, effective operation of monetary and also fiscal policy is very essential to control the inflation. That's all from our group. Let's end the discussion with some quotes from Frederick Leith. He said that inflation is like a sin. Every government denounces it and every government practices it. Thanks for watching and have a nice day. Assalamualaikum.